Here's Stephen in Leeds, got a different point of view. That's why he's up next. Go ahead, Stephen.
Good evening, George.
Good evening.
You know, when we had the Galloway and Robertson's jams, did we ever associate it with black people? No, we...
Black people did. And that's the point, Stephen, you see. You have to walk in the other fellow's shoes. We, when we describe people as watermelon-smiled, grinning pickaninnies, didn't regard it as offensive. The problem for us is that the people about whom it was being said did. We may not have thought the gollywog on the Robertson's jam jar was offensive. The problem was black people thought that it was. You might not think calling someone a cripple is offensive, but a person with disabilities does. And that's the point, Stephen. It's about good manners.
George, you'd not let me have my say. No, I know a lot of black people who didn't find it offensive.
Well, I just don't believe you. They may have told you that they didn't find it offensive. I'm not calling you a liar. That would be to do a Jeremy Clarkson. But I don't believe that they didn't find it offensive.
George, you have called me a liar in the past, a year ago.
Well, just don't tempt me, Stephen, to call you again. Go on and make your point. Go on and make your point.
No, if you allow me to talk, we now have a situation this week that there's a rugby league team called the Celtic Crusaders who have just gone into the Super League. Now we find out that the Muslims in this country object to the word Crusaders.
Well, so do I. So do I, Stephen.
Why, George? You're hijacking the English language.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are, George.
I'm allowed to object to a team of British people calling themselves Crusaders. Why? Because the crusade, for me, is an offensive term. It's an offensive period when we went across the world to conquer other people's countries, suppress them in the name of a Christian crusade.
Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. Every time you ban something, you actually create racism in this country. That's what actually happens. And it's not just the English, the elite in this country. You can go across you can go across loads of white English class working classes.
Stephen, I believe me, do not regard you as part of the elite. And I'm perfectly willing to believe that you use this kind of language all the time. I'm perfectly willing to believe it.
No, George, I don't use this language, but you're actually missing the point. When you ban something, you create racism. Don't you get it? Don't you understand? You're an intelligent man. Don't you understand?
Okay, let me ask you, Stephen, because it is important, I'm sure you'll agree, to be able to walk in the other person's shoes.
Sure.
Let me tell you, I'm looking at a very cool young black man right now. Handsome, gifted, and black. Right now, through the glass, okay?
Right.
If he tells you that calling him a gollywog is deeply offensive and insulting to him, does that not matter to you?
It matters. Well, I'm going to tell you, there shouldn't be such a stir. I'm going to tell you one final thing, George.
No, Stephen, answer me. Answer my question. Because you don't have an answer, do you?
You go again. You're ranting and you're raving on. You're not allowing me to talk.
Stephen.
You're not allowed to see my point. Can I just make a remark to you?
Just before you do, I'm not cutting you off, Stephen. I'll keep you on. You on. I'm asking you, the young man I'm looking at, I can assure you, if I called him a gollywog, he would find it deeply insulting and offensive. Does that not matter to you?
Of course it matters to me.
Well, why should we do it? Why should we do it?
Can I say, the word, when you say Prince Charles, sooty, I mean, I don't actually get it. The person...
I know you don't get it, Stephen.
No, the person who he called sooty too wasn't offended, was he, George?
Well, how could he declare that he was offended, Stephen, when the man calling him it was the heir to the British throne?
George, if he was offended, he would have come out and offended. And I'll say one final thing to you, George. I'm Jewish. If somebody called me a yid, I wouldn't be offended.
Would you not? Well, I'm astounded at that.
I'm above all this, George.
No, Stephen, if somebody called you a yid in my presence, I would break their jaw.
No, why?
Because it's a disgusting, racist slur.
George, it isn't, George.
It is.
It is the context of how the expression is said, not the actual word itself, George. It is how it is said, George. Probably Carol Thatcher. She's a she's a rather unpleasant individual, is Carol Thatcher. And, I think she got what she deserved because, number one, she didn't apologise. You've always got to apologise when you made a remark, and she repeated it time and time again, according to reports. And so she should have been, I have no time for Carol Thatcher whatsoever.
But you don't mind being called a yid?
If a person calls me a yid, a person calls me a yid. I don't really care. I'm above it, George.
Well,
I'm above it.
Well,
I'm sorry. That's just my opinion, George.
Well,
that's just me.
I say to you this, first of all, that's not an opinion shared by the vast majority of Jewish people who would regard that as a disgusting racist slur. And if it was ever said in my presence, I'd take the law into my own hands. There you go, Stephen. Thanks for your call. Here's Patricia in Bournemouth. Go ahead, Patricia.
Good evening.
Hi.
I'm a first-time caller, and I'm very mad. I mean, what is all this nonsense about Carol Thatcher and this gollywog thing? What word is it? It's not offensive. And also, I'm about Prince Harry and calling him Pat. He was talking to himself on a recorder. Prince Charles called his friend Sooty because that friend had always been called Sooty. And also the papers have blown it up out of all proportion, making it up. And also there was a sneak that must have told about Carol Thatcher, and it's all wrong.
No, I'll tell you what actually happened, Patricia. She described this tennis player as a half-gollywog. And somebody who was of mixed race themselves, working at the BBC, in the green room, as well as others, took great offence to that. Can't you understand that, Patricia?
Yes, but I mean, it's so trivial, isn't it?
It's not at all trivial.
It is trivial.
Well,
and in fact,
Patricia,
George, listen to me.
Well, you listen to me for a minute.
I think that you stir up a lot of racism by your remarks about these silly names that nobody cares about.
What silly names?
And also, I take great offence at you calling the royal family filthy racist.
And dysfunctional too, Patricia, or don't you agree with that?
No, I do not.
You think they're a model family, do you?
They are the head of our country.
Are they a model family, Patricia?
I don't know. I suppose they have their faults.
Well, I mean, we could go through them one by one if you'd like.
For you to sit there and call them filthy racist, if I was the Queen, I'd sue you.
Ah, well, the Queen can't sue me because the defence is veritas. The defence is that if your sons and grandsons are going around calling people sooty and packy and raghead and Mongol, then you're bringing up a family that is deeply deficient in manners, apart from anything else. Now, Patricia, I want to ask you a question. I'm inferring that you're white, am I right?
I'm white.
So you have no idea what it's like to be called a gollywog, or a half-gollywog, or a Mongol, because I take it you're not a child afflicted in that way.
No.
I hope you're not crippled, in which case you've never been called cripple.
Well,
but if you were...
That,
Patricia,
I agree, would be offensive.
Well, yes, but that's very interesting.
Yeah.
It's the word cripple you find offensive, but you think it's perfectly all right for people to be called gollywog and half-gollywog. That's trivial to you. And you know why, Patricia? Because you, God forbid, could be crippled, but you'll never be black, and you'll never be of mixed race. That's why the latter two insults are trivial to you, but the first of them is offensive to you. Just mull that over, Patricia. If you weren't a lady, I'd say put it in your pipe and smoke it. Here's